Hi, Sebastian. Welcome. And this
Um,
will probably go for Steinar. And I see somebody sitting next to you as well, Sebastian.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's I'm Mark, the marketeer at EVesto.
Hi,
Meet you all.
welcome. And Steinar is our CEO, Stekker's CEO. Welcome, Steinar.
Thanks,
And we'll have you
everybody.
shortly. And Erik is one of our founders and will do the technical details in a little bit. Welcome, Erik.
Thanks.
Hi. And Sebastian, you, of course, Stekker has partnered with EVesto recently, and you can kick this off to tell a little bit about EVesto and this partnership.
Okay, yeah. I will introduce myself first. I'm Sebastian Groeneveld. I'm one of the three founders to EVesto, which was formerly known as Longship. We started 5 years ago by creating a CPMS system where we really wanted to focus on scalability, reliability, and making it cost efficient. Of course, these were some challenges that were then new to the CPMS market. We decided that we wanted to create a CPMS system that was really focused on delivering that infrastructure that a lot of our CPO clients needed. And because of this laser focus, we really endorse creating an ecosystem that contains of multiple components where everybody is actually delivering something that's really focused on the functionality that's required. So that's why we decided to focus on the CPMS, and the integration with Stekker is really a synergic one because it's solving some of the issues that our clients, especially in the Netherlands, are now facing with grid congestion, where they need EMS, which is energy management systems. Yeah, so it's a great addition to the EVesto integration set, where a lot of our customers can have the benefits of a strong EMS focused solution next to their CPMS solution.
Yeah. So you would say that in these times of congestion, it's really necessary for companies and partners to work together to basically have all the building blocks together to
Yeah,
find.
yeah. So this is a bit of a new approach. Some of our competitors, which are a bit longer in this market, they have adopted the one-stop shop approach, where you basically take all the functionality from a single platform. And we said, no, we're really going to focus on the CPMS part, and we are going to make the ecosystem more viable by partnering with a lot of great solutions that offer the functionality that our clients need. So whether it's fleet management or energy management systems or depot management or narrowcasting, of course, these are all different different ways of delivering information to the end user. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you looking forward to hearing today? Has your curiosity?
Well, I'm very curious to learn more about the proposition that Stekker has and how it's affecting the market. I've already seen some great examples of challenges that are there in the market. I recently saw a post by some of the Dutch CPOs that they are doing some of the curtailment or the lowering of the power delivery on a lot of the public charging infrastructure, which of course needs to be managed from the grid suppliers or from the availability of the power. And these are some of the challenges that we've created the infrastructure to make this possible, but we do not want to implement all the logic to do the smarter stuff. And this is something that I'm really keen to learn more about, how Stekker is solving this for some of these CPOs.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sebastian. And the person who will be able to tell us more about that is Erik de Bruin. Sebastian, feel free to mute yourself or turn your video off during this presentation. Erik, if you would be so kind, thank you. You're already there to share your screen and take it away. I would say, what does Stekker do? What do we do?
Okay, I'm now unmuted. Apparently. Okay, am I visible, and also are the slides visible to you?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's start. Okay, I'll kick it off. Let's see. Oh, it's gonna switch. Always have a little bit of technical. Here we go. Yeah. Um, if I'm in front of the slides, then let me know. Okay. We've defined as Stekker certain levels of smart charging because the word smart is of course pretty ambiguous. It could mean a lot of things, right? So you could already sort of manually do things a little bit smarter. But I think what we are talking about is a much higher level of smart charging. So where, for example, things are really looking into the future, what is going to happen, and also cooperating with other systems. So what you want is an integrated solution. And so we've defined these 5 levels. I'm not going to go completely in depth on every level, but you will see actually that yeah, we're taking into account a lot of factors, and you really sort of we'll really dive in deep because I'm going to focus on the technical part, but the business aspects, which are of course very much related to this, are also going to be highlighted, especially by Steinar. So I'll show you some of the sort of things that are happening deep down, and the thing we are quite proud of, which is called the Stekker engine, and the Stekker engine will incorporate all of these factors. But before we do that, I would like to show you why we are doing this. And so our mission is actually to deliver very advanced software for smart EV and battery charging, and to create the necessary flexibility for the grid. And so in this way, we are actually like a spider in the web, connecting a lot of different things. So we are getting a lot of market information from energy markets. We are getting, for example, real-time information from the DSO or from Tenet, for example, about the balance on the grid. And so we can solve both local problems, for example, in your own installation, but also help solve problems on the grid at several levels of the grid, actually. And of course, while you do this, you would like to have the cheapest source of electricity. And one of the other goals, like we want to do this for a reason, right? We want to ensure that we waste as little green electricity that we produce as possible, and also not create, like if you use another kilowatt hour, it matters a lot when you use it. So if you use it, for example, when there's abundant solar or wind energy, then it actually doesn't cost anything extra for the system. And of course, if you're exposed to these prices, then you will actually save also a lot of money. And so doing the right thing is actually also the thing that is going to save you money. And that's what I really like about this. And the same applies if you don't do the right thing because you just charge very naively. So we call this dumb charging, but naive charging is maybe a better word. So if you don't take into account those factors, you will actually be causing more fuel emissions because the electricity plants require fuel when there's not a lot of green electricity available. So that is the reason why. Let's jump right in. We have a lot of inputs that go into our engine, and this is just to show you what is all being used for creating plannings. And what we call plannings are actually charging plannings, and these are all created in an integrated fashion. So we don't generate a planning for a session one by one, but we look at the total problem on a site, and including all of the factors like external factors from the world, like market information. And these can be multiple different markets which are, for example, further ahead or very close to real time. So, for example, congestion signals are pretty close to real time, but not fully real time. The balancing market is real time, and of course, solar and wind is also, of course, fluctuating very much. But you can forecast it. So there are weather forecasts, and you can get more information in advance about what's going to happen in the near future. And these are all also taken into account. And of course, what should be leading in every charging operation is actually the preferences of both drivers and the business. So what is the priority for the business? That's leading. And we can do this based on, for example, the charging card. So we don't have to say, okay, only these chargers can be used and they get priority, and other chargers are getting a lower priority. No, we can actually do that very granularly. And we can decide, okay, this charging card deserves a higher priority because maybe it's like a consultant that has to leave, be able to leave any moment, and they need it earlier, or it's like a service vehicle that is very important. Or centrally, this can also be managed, and I will show you more about that. And of course, the customer should be leading in that. We also do a lot of machine learning, and machine learning helps us to not require all information all the time from every data source, because we can actually fall back also on information that we can estimate. And this makes it very reliable. And it's very helpful in reducing the amount of information that people have to actually input. So the system will work even better if you input more information, but it will also work based on estimations. And this is very helpful because you want people to just be able to plug in and not do anything complicated in addition to that. All of the outputs, of course, they go, for example, to the chargers, but also they could be like a notification to an end user or information for the whole operation of charging. So this is a useful insight because we actually believe that smart charging is often very much with a lot of situations. You just have load balancing, and then that's already called smart charging. And load balancing is actually very often a complete black box. And we want to open this box and make it more transparent. To make it more clear what we are really talking about, I'm going to show you an example. This is a simple example, but of course it requires a little bit of explanation. We have a system, for example, we call this Stekker Edge, but we are very flexible in terms of what is the data source. So if you already have a good data source for your power usage on site, then we can also make use of that. But in this case, we have a sensor that is installed, and you see in blue. I hope you see my mouse as well, or not? Okay, great. So in blue, and you don't want to go over the limit. And so what we have is a hard limit, which is the moment at which you will get penalties from your grid provider. And then we have a soft limit. We want to stay a little bit below it because there's always a little bit of delay in, for example, when you react to things. So you have a little bit of margin. And what this means is that in combination with the limit, you will have a certain availability for the charging plaza. So if the building has a certain amount of usage, the charging operation will have to make sure it stays below what is remaining. And of course, it could theoretically be the case that the building itself already uses everything, and then we try to go, of course, to zero, or we honor the minimum requirement. For example, if you want minimum of 6 amps on a certain charging session, because that session cannot be interrupted, for example, and we can also accommodate for that. So we have a lot of options there. And what you see is we actually know all of the sessions, all of the power usage of every session on a very granular level. So every individual session, and we can actually steer them individually and also create exceptions for these individual sessions. So and there are interfaces, of course, because those technical screens, they are also to some extent available to you as a operator of the charging plaza, but we will keep it very simple. There's an EV driver view that can simply be used if people want it, and it's not really needed. But you can input it, for example, if you want to leave earlier and you're just an employee who needs their car charged at the end of the day, for example, normally, then, well, you don't have to do anything. But if you need it earlier, then you can use the app to indicate this preference. And then, of course, that is being taken into account in the total planning. And then for fleet management, if you have like a bigger operation where the drives are very critical to your operation, then of course you want to harmonize the planning that you already are making for your logistics operation, harmonize the charging planning and the drive or ride planning. And this is all possible through the interface on the right. And I think the unique thing that we do is really allow people to get full insight into everything and full control over everything on a charger and session level and even on vehicle level, because we can also take into account which vehicles are charging where. Yeah, as I mentioned, transparency and control. We don't want a black box. Like normally, if you just squeeze every session within the remaining amount of power, then yeah, you don't know what's going to be charged first or what sessions will be interrupted, and you get full control over it. Yeah, and it should be also vehicle aware. And if you make it vehicle aware, you can actually shift instead of just squeezing. The squeezing actually means that very often, especially for employees, that all of the charging will still happen in the morning when there's great congestion, but it will just not go over the limit. And I think that's a very low bar, because you don't just want to not go over the limit, but you want to use that cheapest electricity. For example, your solar electricity instead. and then you solve two problems in the same in the same go. That's very beneficial. We also believe in compatibility and free choice. And then, for example, we have our own Stekker Edge solution, which is on location, a solution where we can get not just telemetry, but also do some degree of local control. For example, it's really like an EMS solution. And that's, of course, very valuable because you also can steer more assets, for example, also batteries. And then we are also very brand agnostic. So any kind of charger that complies with a certain amount of standards that we can integrate. And also we support multiple backends. And of course, EVesto is one of those integrations that we've sort of really battle tested and can integrate with. In terms of connection, if a charger is connected through 4G or on the local network, it doesn't matter. We can always interface with it. So you're never really there's no lock-in. That's the thing I want to also mention. We have a situation where there's a cooling or freeze or a use case, cooling or freeze house, which of course has some flexibility, and especially the charging plaza will be able to offer you a lot of benefits. So this is more related to the business case. Stenner, shall I do this one or do you want to do this? Okay, I'll continue then. The difference between charging directly and the charging at a better moment in time also can determine whether you use a lot of solar electricity or not at all. And so before, this is the reference situation, before smart charging, you would use a lot of gray electricity from the grid and very little solar electricity because all of the sessions will happen in the morning. And even with a big grid connection, you don't want this, right? Because if you have solar power on site, you want to use that. And by shifting, you can actually increase the amount. And then there's also I would say a stimulation scheme from the government, which allows you to actually trade the fact that you have charged electric vehicles and then also that you have charged it with zero CO2 emission electricity. So you didn't use any electricity with the grid mix, but you actually used your own solar electricity. And if you can actually show this, then you get another big benefit. So the earnings that you get from this stimulation program will go up by almost 3,000 in this case, 3,000 euros, which is significant. And this is only the additional gains. So that's that you already get a lot of extra by doing this. So smart charging actually increases this, but this scheme, HBEs or EREs in Europe, they are not just used as the only benefit. You actually also get, for example, lower energy taxes because you use more of your own electricity, and you don't have to pay energy taxes for solar electricity, which you did have to pay if you would take the electricity off the grid. And also you get a lower kW max, which is, well, maybe a little bit a Dutch term, but it's actually the 15-minute interval at which you use the most power. That is going to determine part of your grid connection bill. And so if you can lower that, and you do this by sort of lowering all of the peaks, then you also get a lower kW max, and this can save a lot of money on your connection bill. And then, of course, in addition, if you have dynamic prices or exposure to either the imbalance market or the day-ahead market, then with this exposure, you also have savings. So this really lowers the cost per kilometer very much. So it can really be a competitive advantage if you want to lower this and also still accommodate with all of your constraints, so you don't run into problems. And you can scale your operation in terms of charging, in terms of green electricity generation, and just scale your business better. One thing I wanted to say about the dynamic energy prices, it's not just about sort of getting those really low prices, but it's also about avoiding those really high prices. So this is like a safety mechanism. If you can shift away from those expensive hours, that's already a big benefit. And then in addition, of course, you can actually really seek out those very cheap or even negative prices, which are more and more common. I think Steiner is coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, Steiner is coming up. Steiner, if you can share your screen and take it over, that's great. I'm going to spotlight you also. Wanted to say that. So first, thank you, Eric. This was, of course, charging for say one location, and of course, Stekker can do this for many locations, for one customer, for separate customers. So thank you for that overview of a day at a charging plaza, Steiner, for the business cases.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. What I will do, ladies and gentlemen, I'll share a bit more details for the reasons why one of your customers is going to need or want smart charging. And I've identified three groups where I'll explain a bit more for the buying reasons. One is the B2B setting. Semi-public, think office buildings, think logistic hubs. The other group is homeowners, particularly into a situation which is quite common in the Netherlands, where you have an employee who's charging with his car owned or leased by his employer, and the employer is paying that electricity bill for the charging. And the third group of potential customer category is what we define as public charging. So that means the charging happening on the street where any EV driver is able to charge his car. I'll dive into those in a bit, which hopefully touch on most of your customer groups. We have a diverse group of attendees, of CPOs that have probably either one or a combination of these customer segments in their portfolio. I'll touch on them briefly. And the goal is that Gijs Koning of EVesto and myself will, after this webinar, touch base with you to dive deeper into your individual business cases. Let's hit share. Everybody can see my screen now, I think. Cool. So the first segment is the B2B segment, the semi-public situation. It's important. Why you would want to have real smart charging is the fact that it's more advanced than conventional load balancing, where you just have multiple chargers balancing the load. You really need to know what's happening in the meter, what's the total amount that's being used by the building. So that's why you'll in most cases need way more than just conventional load balancing. And the other reason why you would look at software, especially in the Netherlands, stationary batteries are coming up as a big solution for congestion limits. We believe in those batteries, but we think it's extremely important to always try to optimize your existing assets first with software before investing into a large and expensive stationary battery. And if the battery is there, they should definitely talk to each other, the charging plaza, the battery, and also the potential solar installation on the roof. For companies, it's important to look at the smart charging software because electrification is happening, especially in the truck sector. We've learned that in the truck sector, every kilowatt hour is almost, while they look at it as like the diesel price, it needs to be the lowest amount of kilowatt hours they put into the trucks. So therefore, it's extremely important to use smart software in order to have the lowest amount of kilowatt hours that are in your truck, so you are actually having a profitable route and not a one which is costing you more than you have to and therefore burning all your profits. The self-consumption of the solar installation on the roof is important. Sometimes you even find you get negative prices from the grid if you start to feed it in. So therefore, increasing and maximizing your self-consumption is important, and therefore you would also need to have a smart charging software. Overall, this will lead to an optimized cost and benefit of the total power use. And of course, If you have smart software, you get a ton of insight, which is important. What we've learned over the past few years of being active as a smart charging provider in this subsegment, that the number one reason for a company to look for smart charging is usually grid congestion limits, so the transport limits from the grid operator. The second reason is this cost optimization. So that means maximizing your solar self-consumption or shifting charging to the most favorable energy prices. Eric already touched base on that throughout the day, if you have a dynamic pricing contract, your prices will obviously shift from higher to lower rates. And by shifting the moment where you're charging your cars to the cheapest, or let's say the least expensive hours, well, you're especially in a trucking situation where you're operating a logistics company, it's extremely important to run a profitable business. And yeah, the other reason to do that, Eric also touched base on that, are these subsidies, these renewable energy units. As a third reason, we also have some customers that are operating our smart charging software because they want to reduce their CO2 emissions. Obviously, if you charge your vehicles with your own solar energy, you're reducing your CO2 emissions compared to buying what we call gray electricity from the grid. So that can be a third reason, but most of it is the grid congestion limits or its cost optimization. The second customer segment I would like to touch base on are the homeowners. In a homeowner situation, transport limits are usually not the topic of discussion, and CO2 emissions in rare cases, it is usually money. It is optimizing your cost. And most of the homeowners, they have a little parking area for their personal car. They have a EV charger. And yeah, their house has usually solar panels, and the solar panels are extremely important. In the Netherlands, well, there are certain fees in order to feed in this solar electricity, and throughout the years, we'll see that it becomes much less attractive to feed in the solar electricity into the grid, and maximizing your own solar power generation is extremely important for cost optimizations. So for homeowners, we calculated that if you apply smart charging, that we're able to save them 266 euros per year. This can even be increased to, let's say, 270, 280 euros per year if you combine it with certain discount schemes by grid operators. Currently in the Netherlands, they run a certain scheme where the grid operators literally give money to homeowners that are applying smart charging on their vehicles during the evening peak. We would love to touch base with you if you have a lot of homeowners in your portfolio, because yeah, we are ready to implement those discount schemes by the grid operators. So as mentioned, at smart charging at home, it is mostly about cost optimization. And well, we've made quite some calculations on that. And in order to have a proper ROI of your solar panels at home, smart charging is really needed. Because if you don't apply smart charging, your ROI will basically increase to, let's say, 9 years. And if you apply smart charging, well, your ROI is between 4 and 5 years. So for homeowners, it's really about the cost situation. And yeah, we've seen a lot of marketing campaigns being run in the Netherlands for homeowners if they around smart using of their appliances, where they can maybe save, let's say, 50 to 80 euros per year. Well, we believe the biggest benefit for a homeowner in terms of self-consumption of his energy is around charging his car. So we'd love to touch base with you after this call if you have a large portfolio of homeowners in your CPO backend. The third segment I'll touch base on is public charging, so the parking happening on the street. What we see over the past few years, this is usually implemented using public tenders. So the government is sending out tenders where different CPO players can apply for. And I would like to touch base on one current tender. That's the large tender in the Rotterdam area in the Netherlands. It is for approximately 30,000 chargers. And if you look at those tender docs, they're obviously horrible to read. Lots of documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages. But there's an interesting development going on we've identified in these tender documents. And that is that in the public space, you see a shift happening where before smart charging was optional, you now see it becoming the default, the standard. So if you would like to charge at a public charger, you are charging smartly by default, and you need to actually opt out of smart charging and apply for direct charging by doing some sort of activity or let's say touch a few buttons on the app. And that's a major shift. So in the public domain, it is becoming way more common to apply smart charging, and it's actually part of the tender specification. So in order for CPO to win this tender, they would need to apply this this smart charging capability in order to even be considered by the government. And that's where a lot of benefits can also happen in terms of trading on passive imbalance or congestion markets, or creating pricing incentives for end users if they are also confirming with this smart charging profile versus the direct or let's say priority smart charging. So we follow these developments closely, and we find it extremely interesting. And we also find that this is the future on how to use the grid more efficiently. That is it what I wanted to share in terms of those three customer segments. I realize I touched on them on a high level. I've done that on purpose because we have a very diverse group of attendees, and I would love to connect after this call to discuss your particular situation and business case, where we can dive into more details, obviously, per customer segment.
Perfect. Thank you, Steinar, for the presentation. I didn't see any questions in the chat, but Sebastian, I was thinking maybe you have a question that comes up.
Yeah, I have one question. It's more of a personal question as well. I saw this public charging where smart charging is becoming the default. I remember reading an article from the German ADAC about the onboard chargers in a lot of the AC converter in the cars, that the what's it called? The energy revenue goes down if the amperage also goes down on the charging session. So basically you're charging 30 kilowatts, but you're only getting 27 into the battery because the efficiency of the onboard charger is hampering you. So if there's no price incentive on the smart charging, then as a consumer, you're actually getting less energy because the amount of power delivered is lower. Is this something that they are taking into account into these smart charging sessions? So I think it's even taking this into account, it's more beneficial to have full power or no power than actually cutting the power down to lower amperages.
Yeah. Yeah, the same thing we are doing to go to zero, which allows you to shift. Actually means that you don't want to charge with 6 amps or less, because then, for instance, you will get problems because some chargers will shut off. and not really wake up anymore. So this is where vehicle awareness comes in, which is useful. And by shifting, you actually go to a moment in time where you actually benefit from using electricity. So you can even earn money in some instances. And of course, then you charge with full power. And this is not just the most optimal for your vehicle because it has the highest efficiency, but it also, of course, yeah, it's just the cheapest source of electricity. So yes, we do accommodate that. We also have, in some cases, people will get notifications from their vehicle software. So their native app from, for example, Tesla or Volkswagen will give a notification that the charging is going to be suspended or is being suspended. And this can, for employees or for maybe, especially for visitors that are only briefly on a certain site, this can be sort of confusing or distracting. And if you don't want this, you can assign certain chargers to have at least 6 amps. This is not the optimal situations in terms of efficiency, but it's better in terms of user friendliness towards guests, for example. So we have all these different scenarios, and this is also what makes smart charging complex. But then again, if there is a situation that a customer faces, then we can often, very, very often work with it and make a better solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think one of the other concern that's with a lot of CPOs is, of course, getting a maximum utilization out of a charging station. So it's yeah, pulling two sides of the same string. If you want to maximize utilization, of course, you want to deliver as much power as fast as possible and have that car being moved and the next one come in, versus someone that's already telling you I'm going to stay until 5 o'clock. But yeah.
Yeah. I would say a lot of inefficient things are happening in a lot of places. And so getting full control over when charging happens and also the power is a very beneficial thing. But also unifying charging of batteries and unifying it with the charging plaza is also very beneficial. So if you have a battery, then very often it's used in a very inefficient way because the two things don't talk to each other. And we can actually create both battery plannings and vehicle plannings and have them fully integrated. This is a big benefit. And this is also where our Stekker Edge solution comes in. So we have a local solution that actually can talk to the battery at a very low level. And we can make the best choices about the state of charge and really also make sure that locally, for example, if your internet connection is down, that still you have all of the safety mechanisms that are required, of course, to have. Because the last thing you want is to pay fines and also have fuses trip. So with a local solution, you don't depend on the internet. We can have the best of both worlds because we can have the cloud infrastructure doing all of the smart planning and, for example, creating forecasts based on the weather. So this is a very complex thing to do, and it works best in a cloud environment. And then the part where you need the reliability, you do that locally. And this is the thing that responds really fast and really reliably. And so you have both the reliability and you have the optimization of all of the benefits. So because you have to do both, right? You have to do all of the goal seeking to achieve the best outcome, but also keep into account all of the constraints at a real-time level. So, yeah.
I wanted to touch on so Eric, if people are interested and they want to say yes to Stekker, I'm curious if you can explain a little bit about where does the cloud solution come in and when do you need to go somewhere locally? So say one of EVesto's customers has about 5 locations. What would need to happen in order to onboard people onto Stekker so that Stekker becomes a part of their EVesto?
Yeah, you're asking me or not?
Customer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking you. Yeah, Eric. Yeah.
It depends a little bit on, for example, chargers can have local load balancing already available, and this will solve the real-time need for example, making sure fuses don't trip. And we will stay, of course, within the cloud solution, we will stay within, of course, those budgets as well. And we will do much more from the cloud. But then you have like the fallback solution where, for example, any connectivity issue with your internet connection is not a problem because the load balancing will kick in if like a safety catch. And it will usually not be used because in the cloud we also take into account those grid limitations. But then we do much more. So the hybrid situation can make use of the charger and everything it has on board for load balancing. But very often it's very hard to get the electricity data or the real-time data from your local grid connection into the chargers and have them accommodate for that. And then So what we do is we can also do this with our Stekker Edge solution. And Stekker Edge will send us the data into the cloud, but also be able to have local load balancing. So then you have both. And so the hybrid situation is probably always the better situation. Yeah, onboarding that, we can help out with the whole process of making sure your electricity meter is equipped with the right metering equipment and also the right data conversion. So the chargers will be able to be controlled. So basically we are like an adapter on both sides. So we can accommodate multiple kinds of meters and we can accommodate many kinds of chargers. And so compatibility is not an issue anymore.
Yeah, that's what I hope to hear because indeed some people still have old chargers, but in any case, if you have a connected charger, then we can work through the CPO. Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to also mention that many cases where smart charging is not properly possible because maybe some chargers are installed a little bit earlier and they are connected through a SIM card, and other chargers are on the local network and they are a different brand. All of these things can be combined. So we have customers that were not able to use this smart charging properly because people would just drive up to the chargers that were not smart charging and use those especially. And so the behavior of people, if you only have a few chargers that are part of the smart charging, will also affect whether you can actually properly have that flexibility. And so if you can unify all of those chargers and whether they're connected through SIM or on the local network doesn't matter. Of course, this is not possible with the local EMS solution. You cannot control those chargers that are connected through a SIM card. And yeah, you want to include all of them, ideally.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Eric and Steinar. I think we have nothing to add. I think Sebastian as well. So
Great.
with that, I would like to thank everyone for participating, for attending. A recording will be made available to this select group, so you can also send it on to your colleagues. And I would like to thank you very much, and we can follow up on email also if you have any questions. So thank you all.
And maybe I can ask one
Yeah,
question for everybody who's still interested to do this.
of course.
Maybe you can add in a very short sentence what you found interesting or what you've learned during this event, so we can actually improve it for the next time and make sure that we include that information, or whether something was missing. But then hopefully you would have asked the question.
Yeah. Well, as not everybody has used the chat, maybe I should mention that the button for the chat is at the bottom. I realized at a certain point that I didn't explain how, if you haven't found the chat button, then maybe it's hard to find. But still, I can imagine that if people don't want to mention it now, they can also do it by email.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
all of you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.